Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Peter Igaga, and always we want to welcome you to your favorite show, the one show that makes sense every Wednesday night, and that is Men. Now, last week we kicked Chris off the show, but he's back.
I'm back! I'm back! Yay!
He came back by force. He said it doesn't matter what we do,
I'm
he
here.
is going to be here, so he's here.
Yes.
And also, there are quite a number of you who missed him last week, so Chris, somebody mentioned that you are a voice of reason.
Oh,
How
I'm
true that
so
is.
honored to hear that.
Now we're here at the Naguru Skies Hotel and we're talking about business. Now Uganda, without a doubt, is one of the most entrepreneurial countries in the world. A lot of people have great ideas. We are busting with ideas. Things start, but they don't last. Now, we're here to tackle that because if we don't do that, this good nation of ours will not move forward. Now, with us tonight, we do have a special guest, Mrs. Atwine. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Good to have you here. Now, first of all, I'll start with you, Chris.
Yeah.
You're a businessman, amongst one of the things that you do. In your opinion, do we hit challenges and roadblocks because we just lack planning, or are these just part of the normal teething problems, but we are just not able to weather the storm?
So first of all, there's so many businesses that start, and also equally so many businesses that shut down, and for so many reasons. But I think that the entrepreneurial spirit is one that is tapping the opportunity and wanting to take advantage of it, but not necessarily able to build systems. Because business is really about systems. So if you aren't able to build processes and systems around the idea you have, if you can't systematize your idea, then you don't have a business. So most people would tell you that they have a business, they're running a business, but it's really self-employment. And the interesting thing about self-employment is this, that you know, you jump from having one boss when you're employed to having many bosses. Okay, so every one of those bosses is asking you to do things, and it's still the same you who is responding to this boss and that boss and the other boss, and so it gets to a point where you burn out and fry,
Okay,
and die.
Hold on, you know, just for the sake of our viewers,
Yeah.
are you saying that when you're employed, you have one boss?
One,
The moment you are self-employed, you get into business.
every customer you get is a boss. But that's different from when you are running a business. And I think it's Robert Kiyosaki who, in his book, The Cash Flow Quadrant, really explained this very well. That you have the E's who are the employees, you have the S's who are self-employed, who usually think they're business, but they're not. You have the B's who are real business, have put up a process and a system that is scalable. And then you have the I's who are the investors. So many times as Ugandans, we're saying to ourselves that we're starting a business or we've started a business. But if we walked away from it, it would collapse. So that means it's not a business. Because if you walk away from it and it collapses, it isn't a business. There are no set processes, there are no set systems. There's nothing you can pass on to another who can do it as well as you can. Yeah. And so it's very few people who are able to build a real business. Someone once said that a business is one which when you go away for a year, you come back and find it have grown from when you left it. Yeah. In other words, again, systems, processes.
Yeah, okay, good stuff. Benji, I mean, we come across so many people. Everybody nowadays says they have their small business. Okay. First of all, I have that problem with calling your business small because you're already putting it into a certain box and saying it won't grow. As Chris has mentioned, are we really running businesses, or are they just side gigs, something to keep us busy?
I think it's just about terminology. But we need also to understand why most of us in Uganda are running a business. Some of us and many people out there are running the business because it is not ideally what they want to do, but because it is what they must do. Okay? Because let us look at the rate of employment in our economy, you know, where you have one boss, as Chris said, one boss that you report to. The opportunities are actually very limited. So most cases you will have to engineer in your brain and say, how can I make myself employed? So you start a car business. You are calling it car business because I know a number of such business people are saying, you know, I am spending time here as I look for more employment. And I think that's the beginning of the problem. Because if you want to grow your enterprise, you can't say, I am here and passing. You have to be here to stay for the long term. So that becomes the first challenge and the first problem. And of course, the issue of car business is just maybe business, it's just language. I have some thing. The other thing I can say about businesses, again, it is going to take me back to what Chris has said, is that a business, when you are growing a business, it has to be able to, you have to be able to develop it such that in your absence, the business can operate, the business can run. So once a number of entrepreneurs, I am going to call them entrepreneurs for purposes of this discussion, they will start a business and it is just basically about them. It's just basically about today's survival. Have I gotten bread? Have I gotten sugar? Have I gotten transport back home? So, and it will remain stuck there, that it can't make baby steps, then childhood steps, then youth steps, and then it grows.
So are you saying that we don't think beyond?
Not necessarily. There are those business people who think beyond, who start and say, I am starting this eatery, this food joint in, say, Chalwajara, but I want to start from here, learn, see how the business is going. Then, when I expand, I open a branch in Nakulabye, and probably I'll open, in 5 years, I should have a branch in town. And they work to grow the business. But you need to look at the way we start our businesses in terms of planning, but also in terms of capital outlay. How much money are we putting in? You know, these days there is the concept of SMEs. Now they even begin with an M, micro, then small, then medium. You understand?
MSMEs.
MSME. You begin with micro. You know, yeah. There is a way they categorize in terms of money, how much capital outlay you've put there. But let us be honest. A number of these enterprises are starting, and some of these enterprises, they are first-time entrepreneurs. They don't have the skill. They probably even have not researched about what they want to do, whether the market is there, how to run it. It is, in Uganda, we call it falling in things. You have just fallen in the business. Anyway, since I don't have formal employment, so let me start here. So for me, I see that as being the biggest challenge. I am operating a small business, not a micro. Okay, a small business. But I'm seeing that if I wasn't very steady, it would have collapsed. Because I reached a time when it was not growing and we were stuck. So what do we do then? So if we didn't have this mind to say, let us ask people who have been there for a time, let us read around this business, and we see how we can engineer it and put systems in place, then we would have had a problem. Because sometimes you are not there to run the business. Yes. Mm.
Now, Mr. Atwine, what has come out clearly from these two gentlemen is the issue of systems. As I mentioned earlier, we live in a society where we don't believe in systems. You see the way we walk, the way we talk, the things we do. You also alluded to it, you talked about shortcuts. That is who we are. Does that affect our performance in business?
It does big time, and probably that explains why 90% of our businesses collapse, because everything in life runs on a system.
Yeah.
Our lives run on systems. We have a respiratory system.
Yeah.
We have a digestive system. We have, I mean, think about even transport system. Now, we live in a society that does not favor systems. We live a life of shortcuts. We don't follow procedure. And we also run, we have this kind of lifestyle where we think it has to be now. No one has the patience to really see something grow and move. And so we want it right there.
Yeah.
So I mean, we have no choice. We just have to go back to work out the systems, because we can't beat the system.
Yeah, it is what it is.
You know, that's what it is.
Yeah.
So until we pick the discipline to run things according to systems, then we are not headed anywhere.
You've talked about discipline and also patience. Now, the two are very closely related because one of the things that we generally suffer from, and I dare say especially as black-skinned people, is this thing called delayed gratification.
Yes.
We want to get into a business, we want to make money, we want to drive a Range Rover. Just actually a couple of days ago, there's a friend of mine who did some very interesting mathematics. They were trying to buy a small truck, and where they were, they saw an even bigger truck and asked for the price of the truck. He was very shocked to find out that the big truck costs roughly $10,000.
And the small truck?
The small truck is much cheaper. That one is much cheaper. However, he later found out that a Range Rover, especially the new Evoque, costs $40,000. So he was saying, but hold on, so I can, from that Range Rover, I can buy four trucks. Now, I'll have the Range Rover. There's nothing wrong with driving a Range Rover. But he said, if I had $40,000, I'd rather buy 4 trucks, okay? Because they'll make much more money for me than the Range Rover, which I can't even drive every day, spends more time parked under the shade. So,
and every time you scratch it?
Yes, it's a cost.
Big cost.
Yes. So, delayed gratification, why don't we have that? Because you are a behavioral scientist. Yeah.
You know, everything is culture. Culture is so important. Going back to our business culture, I think one of the biggest problems is that we don't start a business out of a burden. We start a business out of a passion, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so passionate about this. But anything that is not supported by a burden will collapse. And what do I mean? Every business we should be doing should be answering a question. It should be addressing a problem. If you're starting a business, a transport-related business, it should be addressing a certain problem somewhere. If you're doing a shop, it should not just be driven by profits, but it should be addressing a certain problem. Now, why is a burden very important?
Before you tell us that,
Yes.
I'm going to just have to go into a quick break. And then we're going to come back and you'll tell us exactly why we have to sort that burden. Now, we're here at the Naguru Skies Hotel talking business. However, it's no secret that in Uganda, a lot of our businesses don't go past their first birthday. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after the break. Welcome back from the break. In case you've just joined us, we're here at the Naguru Skies Hotel talking about business. Now, this is your show. We want to hear from you. Let's have a chat on both Facebook and Twitter. Our handles are right at the bottom of your screen. Now, Mrs. Atwine, before we went into the break, you were telling us about having a burden, to be driven by a burden and to solve an issue.
Now, so as I said, every business should be answering a certain problem. It should be addressing a certain problem. Transport sector, water sector, whatever it is, any business should be addressing a societal problem somewhere. Now, the importance of that is that in case your passion, because businesses grow, there's that growth curve. Again, that's what we were talking about. Some people not waiting for that. They just want to earn. They depend on calculator profit.
Yeah.
but then they are not looking at how this business is supposed to grow through the stages. But just in case a business faces a challenge somewhere, your burden, the burden holds you, you're still driving towards addressing a certain, and until that is done, then you're not giving up. But if it is passion, passion is just flimsy, it's feelings. It's, so in case you get and get bored, then you drop it. And I think that explains part of what we go through with our businesses. What it could explain the high mortality rates of, most businesses. Yes, so that's one big issue as far as I'm concerned. And then secondly, related to that is that not everyone is called to be a business person. Not everyone. So whoever is starting a business, are you sure that's your calling? Are you sure you have the skill? I mean, skills can be, but do you have that? Is that your calling? Probably you're meant to be employed. Probably you're supposed to do something else. Probably you're supposed to serve in another area. So I think sometimes we get into business as a matter of peer pressure. You know, some people resign jobs because they've been told, oh my God, somebody started a hardware shop and they are making killer money, and then they get in. But they haven't really thought about it, they haven't conceptualized it, they haven't, you know, critically analyzed how everything is going to work together, and so they get money from their side, and then they are pushing it into a business, and off it goes.
Now, Chris, very closely to what Mrs. Atwine has said, research. We get into a business, because I've seen Chris is making money. I don't know, even if it's that particular business that is making your money for you. I see Chris as, I say, I used to see him, we used to be with him in the taxi just the other day. Now he's driving a new car. Yes, then he's got a new house. I say, I'm getting into that. Could research be one of the key issues that are letting us down? We just don't do our research to understand.
Well, I think there's more than research, and I'll tell you why. I kind of feel that whereas on one end we are not well researched, on the other end we are paralyzed by lots of analysis.
Analysis paralysis.
Yes, exactly. Analysis paralysis.
Analysis by analysis.
Yes, exactly. There's a friend of mine who says what we need to do is, instead of ready, actually there's a speaker who once said, you know, there's societies where you have ready, aim, 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 and there is never firing. Okay, because we are researching and researching and researching, you never get to run a business like that. And I think that, I mean, you go to Chikobo, all these places where there are people who are making real money. I mean, like, there's learning from the land of hard knocks. So what those guys say is ready, fire, then aim. As in, you know, course correct as you go, but you're learning something. You are learning another way not to do it, all right? And I think that that's important for business, because especially it seems that the more educated we are, is the more fearful we are about taking risk. And business is about taking calculated risk. But if our education makes us risk averse, then chances are we're not going to really make good money out of business, because we're analyzing everything. Right? And yet, you know, for some guy, they'll jump into the water so many times and know, okay, there are sharks here, there's a whale there, there's a crocodile there, so they say this is the sweet spot where there's no crocodile. But learning from the land of hard knocks, and they have an informed gut. Okay? But I just, if you just would allow me, I would like to touch a little bit on what Mrs. Atwine said. The thing about the burden, what she called a burden, I think it's okay to call it a passion. Some people call it purpose. But I agree that it has to be tied with a need that you want to solve, but it's got to be a need that you feel so strongly about. Right? I think in the book, Good to Great, Jim Collins talks about something he called the hedgehog concept. The whole thing of great companies are really drilling down on one thing. And he drew like 3 Venn diagrams, and the middle of that is really what we need to be doing. In one part he says, what are you passionate about? What do you feel so strongly about? What need do you really want to solve? And I totally agree with that. But just having a need you're solving without you being really good at solving it doesn't make sense, because you get money because you're the best at something.
Yeah.
All right. If I'm making money from coaching, business coaching, I've got to really be one of the best coaches.
Yeah.
Such that if you experience me, you keep on saying, Chris, please come back.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm a business coach. So every time I get an opportunity to coach a client, I want to be the best business coach, so they call me back. Because if I'm not the best, there's no way I'm going to be paid for it.
Yeah.
Right? But then the third part of that is that it's got to be able to pay you well. It's got to be to have an economic engine, a profit per whatever, profit per coaching session, profit per something, right? So the intersection, which is a hedgehog, or is that thing which you are passionate about, you are the best at in the world, and it pays you well. So every time one of those 3 things is not in the play, most times the business doesn't work. So it doesn't matter how much research you're doing. Yeah. If you're not passionate, because you can say, okay, let's get into pharmaceuticals. People get sick, so they have to pay. I can get the best pharmacist there is, but you're not really solving a problem, because they actually
okay, we get it.
Help save many people's lives, at least that I know about. We used to run to Freka, so that's the point I'm making. So those 3 things are important, and it doesn't matter how much research you do if you're not passionate about it and you're not
but
good
what
at
about
it.
delayed gratification? Because I'll tell you what, there's a very thin line between what you've said about money, because I know a lot of people hip hop from different businesses. Somebody starts a business, says, it's not making money. Jump onto another one. Say, no, it's not making money. Jump onto another one.
Isn't that a combination of things? Because I think there is delayed gratification in the sense that when you start the business, pay yourself very little so that you do not overburden the business. For it to, you don't run it into the ground because you are actually repatriating the capital. Okay, that's something. So you grow it to a point where it's able to take care of you and all your desires.
Correct.
Okay, so that's one thing. The other thing that I think the hopping from one place to another is to say, when you start a business, stay with it long enough for it to be able to have a life of its own, to have a momentum, so that it's got its own pace. I think it's Patrick Bitature who said that. I once heard him say that he basically does a master's every 2 years. He stops to study about a certain area he wants to invest in for 2 years. There goes research. He reads up about it, he asks questions. So by the time he invests in it, he has had 2 years ahead of preparing to invest. But that's someone who you can clearly see is going in it for the long haul, at least for that business. He sets it up, he makes sure it runs, and once it has a life of its own, then he can move to the next one. Another one. So I don't think there's a problem in us having multiple businesses, because I think there's a scripture in Ecclesiastes that says that that a dream is made out of a multitude of businesses. So it's true that you actually need to have multiple streams of income to be able to get your big dream in life. Okay, Sudhir, I think, has, I don't know, 50, 100 businesses, and he's in everything, grain and God knows what else. But that said, I think every one of those we start, we need to grow it again. Build a system, build processes. It stands on its own. You've employed the right people, you have the right strategy, the best execution for it, and it's got its cash flows going well. Then you let it go, and then pick up with it. Pick up another.
Banji.
I think you've, Chris, you've asked that question twice, and Chris touched on it. Gratification. There is a tendency to say you grew up not eating chicken. Now that I have a business, every evening I will order for chicken. And these days, life has been made very easy that you just make a phone call. So
It's there.
surely you can have chicken for breakfast, for lunch, and for supper. And then you grew up probably not even riding a bicycle. Now all of a sudden you check on your account and there is 15 million. In Uganda, 15 million will buy you a car or 2 cars. Probably the car which will send you to the mechanic every other day. Or if it is much money, you have 100 million, so you think of a more expensive car. So business should be run in such a way. I want to quote this gentleman who writes in the New Vision, Paul, I think, Busharis. He's an economist with the New Vision. He always writes about money. And he wrote and said that, for instance, if you are buying a car, if you are running a business and you want to buy a car, the car should be less than 10% of your month's income. Less than the cost of the car, less than 10%. So if you are buying a Range Rover Sport of 400 million, your business should be turning
You have at least
4 billion,
yeah.
for you to spend
Per month.
Yes, per month. So that it is not a burden. If you are building a house out of your business, it shouldn't exceed 10% of your annual,
Yeah, turnover. Yeah.
turnover, so that your business remains standing. So I think the challenge that we see in our country is that we have been starved long enough. So we feel that when you start a business and you start checking money in the wallet, then it is money for eating, for consumption. It's not for reinvestment. And it touches on what Chris said, that when you run a business, whether it is a micro, small, or whatever, you have to ask yourself, how much money do I eat from this business?
But when do you start paying yourself?
Because imagine I am the one operating the business, okay, and I don't have any other source of income, and I'm running this business. I have to eat from it in such a way that I don't burden the business. And that's why you need to understand the cash flow, and then you say, well, if I'm generating 1 million per month, how much do I pay myself in order to leave the business running? So you could pay yourself maybe 150, so that the business keeps running. So as the business grows and it grows and the money multiplies, then you can sit again and say, I think now it is time for me to increase my salary. So you are the one leading the payroll.
Yeah.
So you begin by paying yourself money that will not cripple your business, because we are used to seeing people working for government departments. We have, and I'm sorry to bring in politics, we have people who work in the parliament and say, for us, 11th parliament, we are going to earn 50 million. It's not coming from their business. So you can't behave like them. They are eating taxpayers' money. For you, you don't want to eat your own eggs. What will hatch?
Now, we need to go into a break. We are here at the Naguru Skies Hotel talking business. When we come back, and I'll start with you, Mr. Twine, education versus non-education. You alluded to it a little bit, because there are a lot of people who say that you don't need to be educated to run a business. Now, we'll be right back straight after the break, and you don't want to miss this part. See you then. Welcome back from the break. In case you've just joined us, we're in the last section of our show that's talking about business. Now, it's no secret that almost 90% of the businesses in Uganda don't go beyond their first anniversary. And these are some of the things that we're trying to decipher. Now, education versus non-education. A lot of people say, oh, you know what, if education was such a great thing, then how comes the university professors who teach business are not the best business minds in the country? A tough one.
That's tough. First of all, well, let's not be fooled. What kind of education are we talking about? You can be a professor. You can be a professor out there, and you can even be a professor of business. But as I drove here, I was just thinking about this great principle that life is about 80% application of principles, and 20% miracles. So by knowing by knowing the knowledge, you know, business knowledge and theory and all that, it doesn't necessarily guarantee someone to be a great business person. So it is, I mean, it's the same thing with Chris. I don't want to mix in too many things. It's the same question, like you would ask, oh, you know, me, I go to church all the time, but how come this person who doesn't go to church seems to be blessed more, you know? Yeah. That's the same thing. It's about application of principles. So somebody was talking about how not so many professors have buildings on Kampala Road or in town here. And so we see people who may not have gone so high, formal education, are running successful businesses. It's application of principles. It's application of some of the systems we are talking about. It's about somebody's patient. I mean, they are interested in seeing their business grow. They've adjusted their lifestyle, and they fit within what he was talking about. If your business is still growing, you're not expecting to get money to take sausages and all and all. And if you could allow me, to say a little more about our education, of course, you know that much of it trains us to live a certain life we probably can't afford. And so you get someone who has been up there, they've been going to, I don't know where, they've been in airports and all, they're used to a certain lifestyle. All of a sudden, they're just going to retire and they think, oh wow, look, I need to start some business. You understand? And so they have no idea. But even if they have an idea, they get into business and they have a hard time making adjustments in their personal lives. They still want to, to live the same way, and so then they strain the little business. So somebody
you're enjoying taxpayers' money.
just a minute, maybe before maybe you go to Chris. And I am sorry for sounding sometimes very political. Given that I'm in the education sector, and given that I am one of the privileged few who is educated maybe in the Ugandan system. We need to know that the current system we have of education, I want to call it a colonial system. When the missionaries introduced this education in 1900, what were they after? They wanted people who could speak English and spread the word, translate the Bible, okay? When the colonialists came in, they wanted so that if they are asking people to grow cotton somewhere in Soroti, they can explain to the farmers in English. You understand? They wanted you to go and study administration, and then you help them to run the colonial government. And this links back to what I said at the beginning. But if you look at the current Uganda, these kinds of jobs are very few. You understand? So why do I go to school and you teach me how to teach nursery kids and then I don't have a job? You understand? Now, when people get educated, they also want, they put the expectations at a certain level. They want clean life, and these educated people also sometimes, some of them want to invest in clean business. How many people with a master's degree would go to Bushenyi with a truck, a Fuso truck, and buy and load matoke and bring it to Kampala? We know that if you brought a Fuso of matoke to Kalerwe market, you will go home with your 300,000 profit, just a night. But how many of them with a master's or even with a bachelor's degree will think of doing that? You understand? So our education tends to give people a thinking that you know what, for you, we are training you to sit down and then someone shall advertise and you will apply and then you will get a job. But also our education is also not linked to business. And this is where the problem is. We are seated at one of the magnificent hotels. I don't know, and I am very glad I saw in the papers, I think last month, they were linking up with, I think, Isbat University to train graduates in hospitality. Okay? So they will come here, they will see how to handle guests, and probably then someone could think of turning their own home because your father has a 5-bedroom house and you have all matured, you could turn it into a bed and breakfast.
An
You know?
Airbnb,
Yes, people are sleeping in 5-bedroom, 6-bedroom, even if it is a 2-bedroom house. If you market it out there and you say, well, even if you just say, I have a compound in which people can camp. They are normally these students who come in groups and they just want camping space. So the problem with education is that we are more about looking for jobs than starting a business, but also when we look at business, we want clean business.
Yeah.
We don't want to
roll our
latten,
sleeves,
to roll,
yeah.
you know.
Can I just build up on a little bit on what you're saying? One of the things that's actually really shocking to discover is when you look at the developed economies, US, you look at Germany. Let's just take Germany.
Germany is the best example.
The economy is held up by people who have done vocational education.
Yes.
So 70% of most of the people, the workforce, have done vocational education. They are engineers, they are plumbers, they are people who are handy. And they're paid very handsomely.
Lots of money, yes.
In fact, in some of these places, you're paid a lot more when you are a doer than when you're just an academic.
Yes.
All right? So you find that the people in academics are doing what they ought to do, which is do research to improve systems and processes so that the people who are actually doing the stuff can do it easy and quicker.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, in our economy, you have a strong push for 70% academia and 30% vocational.
Vocational. Yeah.
So is there any wonder why we've got the results we have? So
It's back to front, yeah.
Exactly, because we've got the whole thing upside down. Now, when we were in, I was in Buganda Primary School many years ago, and there was this guy called Moses, I forget his second name, but he was a son of a Hajj. Every time we walked from Buganda Road towards that old taxi park, he would go to one of his father's shops. And he would, you know, his afternoon would be spent there. In the evening, he helps to sell and all that. And then he goes back home. And another friend of mine called Jagwe and others, whose parents were into business. Now, from a very early age, they are practicing the business. You find that by the time they're done with senior 4, they probably know most of the way the business works and operates. They go to S6 and they're now going with the parents to, you know, shop for stuff from wherever, which country they get it from, bring it here, and so they know the business. So by the time the guy is 25, he's ready to run their own.
Yes.
Right? Say, okay, you know, you've learned now, I want you to start your own spare parts shop and grow it.
Yeah.
Right? So by the time that person makes 30,
They are on a whole different level.
you
yeah.
are talking to someone who's got a postdoctorate in the practice of business. And here's what I discovered. There's a difference, as it turns out, between someone who has a master's in business administration, like I did study, in a prestigious place, Esami, okay? Very different from a master's in business dynamics.
Hands
Because
on, yeah.
business dynamics is how do you do this?
Do it.
Yes.
When your people are giving you problems, how do you deal with it?
Yeah.
When you have taxation issues, how do you deal with it?
Which
how
you are a guy to talk to.
Yeah,
and
with
stuff
building
like that.
systems.
Yeah.
What is strategy really? How do you bring it to life? Is it like this big fat book? You know, all that stuff. So the thing is that the guy who has been running his business in Chikubo and has grown it from having 10 sacks of beans to having 40 tons of beans in a month, that guy is at a whole different level.
Yeah.
And we need to be humble enough to go and learn from this guy.
Yeah.
I was reading a newspaper, one of these guys, I think the guy of Freedom City, one of his brothers, I mean, they were all raised by their dad and he would make them save, but one of the brothers said their dad was telling them that they had to save when they were young. He says, what do you spend on? All the money you get, save 80% and invest it. So when someone grows up saving 80% of what they earn and they invest it, their saving muscle is huge.
Yeah, and they understand it.
And they understand that that's how you grow the business, right? So when they grow older and there are more responsibilities, because their threshold is 80%, they will save a lot more than the person who reverse,
Yeah.
gets only 10% and choose the rest. That is
yeah.
if the 10% is there. So that's I think that
Yes.
it's in the practice, it's in the application, it's in the
Yes.
doing. The guys who have grown in business have been at it for a long time.
Yeah.
And I mean, I am a swing from academia to practice.
Yes.
I am certainly rather late,
Yeah.
but better late than never.
Then never.
That's
Just
right.
do it.
Yeah.
Now, guys, we've reached a point where we do need to wrap up. But just one question which I'd like you to answer in your parting shot. What can parents do to either prime their children for business? Because that's where we've got a gap. You mentioned it. Most cases, when people die, they die with their businesses. There's no continuity, and we'll never grow if we don't sort that out. Manji, your parting shot.
And I think Chris, a few months ago, was here laboring, talking about succession planning.
Correct, yes.
And he was trying to say it is a shared vision. And I think it's our duty as parents, if we are running businesses, to make sure that the children participate. Okay, the family should participate in the business, so that as they grow, first of all, they learn how to do, but also, yes, but also they learn how what you are doing operates, you know, so that either with you or without you or on their own, they have developed the skill, you know, to do something. I think that is very, very important, and it is something that I have really seriously talked about. But also general about business, I think there is also one small thing that we have not talked about, is that for business to grow, you must really also be able to meet what we call state obligations, issues of license, issues of taxes, issues of recording, because that's the way the business grow. So that tomorrow, if you are asked, for instance, to supply coffee to this hotel, do you have the documents to show that you can supply this? So the tendency we have, those of us who are, you know, especially in micro businesses, you are selling, but you don't know how much volume you sell, you don't know how much money comes in, so you cannot pitch to someone who has a restaurant and say, you know, I can give you these chapatis at a much lesser cost than you doing them yourself. So I think this becomes very, very important. But also, lastly, I think that business requires a lot of being patient, you know, being patient, but most importantly, being focused. Do you know what you want? What is your long-term goal? And then you go for that.
Good stuff. Mr. Trini, your parting shot in 1 minute.
Peter, we didn't have an opportunity to talk about the younger generation and how it's like absolutely ruined because of the way we have raised them to believe they can eat from where they haven't earned. You know, we live in a society, and if any of us has run a business and I'm not saying all of them, but the biggest group, we've groomed a culture amongst the young people, of course, in our families where we believe in, you know, quick things, you know, and I can get money, and the word is deal, and everything is deal, and so we have this younger generation that has no patience at all, and this is coming from, you know, how us the parents have you know, the kind of culture we have instilled. Parents are doing deals, we are raising children who are into deals. They don't see how you're earning, but then they know that you're working in a certain government ministry, your salary is this, you don't have a side income, but somehow you have all these things.
Because you have all these deals.
You understand, you have all these deals. And so we are raising a generation of deals. And so even one of the reasons businesses are not working is people, first of all, they have businesses as side income, as side business. You have no time. So you get all these young people who get in and they are calculating, they're like, oh my God, if I'm going to really earn 200,000, and when will I buy a Land Cruiser? So they just carry your capital and go with it.
Yeah.
So I think as parents, we really, really need to step back and get to our children and help them understand that you cannot spend what you haven't earned.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think we just have to go back to the basics.
The essentials. Great stuff. Chris,
No,
your parting shot in 1 minute?
I think, yeah. So, sage wisdom, I mean, age-old wisdom, would tell us that the best way children have learned has been from their folk. Jesus learned how to be a carpenter from Joseph. You do the family business. You learn the ropes from someone who's older than you. And so if we find ourselves in a space where we ourselves are not really in business, then get a friend who's in business and ask them to coach your child to really apply themselves. I don't think there is a shortcut. The other thing I would like to say is that we need to stop overprotecting our kids. Some people think that when a child starts handling money when they're younger, they're going to get spoiled. But look, if you tell me it will spoil me, money will spoil me when I'm young, then when I get old, you say, get money. So like, what are you saying?
Exactly you want,
is it going to spoil me or is it good? So I think that we need to allow our kids, and personally I've encouraged my kids to get into business. They do little things, rear some animals, sell some jewelry, do different things, because if they practice learning how making money and keeping their profit and saving it and reinvesting it, then I'm building the muscle. And I don't think it's wrong for a child to have money if they've worked for it.
Yeah.
I think that's what we should do.
Great stuff. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it from the team. We've been talking about business. Mine is just very simple. You've got to work hard because there are no shortcuts. And also the company you keep. Shakespeare said, show me your friends and I'll tell you who you are. If you want to be good in business, stay close to good business minds. With those few words, we say good night, God bless, and we'll see you next week.